Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Latina Connection with me, Ruby Garcia. For those of you that might not know me, I'm Ruby Garcia. I'm a leadership and life coach and certified hypnotherapist too. I love to throw that one in because it always gets a lot of oohs and ahs. And some of you might be familiar with the LinkedIn Lives that I've been doing. I started them at the beginning of the year. They were a lot of fun. And then I kind of took the summer off and I really missed a lot. And so I've been talking to incredible people all this time. So I wanted to restart them. And this is, before I didn't have a name for it, I'm calling it Latina Connection. And it'll be a bi-weekly live stream to LinkedIn, Facebook, my Facebook coaching page, and YouTube. So you can always, if you're not able to make it, you can always catch the replay. It's good to be back. And if you're listening in, I would love just for you to comment and let me know where you are listening in from. And we have Jocelyn. Hey, Jocelyn. She's in the LA area. So just let us know where you're listening in from. Send us a little emoji, like, how's your day going? And I'm excited to be in this conversation today because I think Madi and I don't know if it was last year we might have met or, within the last year, who knows what time, right? But Madi and I met last year and I just instantly gravitated to her energy and her story, and we've had some conversations. And so when I restarted up these LinkedIn Lives, I knew that I wanted to bring her on to tell her story. And I think it's a topic that even if you're not in the creative space, that you can glean a lot of information from, because this is also about stepping out of what's expected of you. So, stepping out of family expectations, stepping out of cultural expectations, maybe even societal norms, stepping out, even though there might be people doubting, and maybe you're even self-doubting a little bit, but you're determined to do something different. And so I don't know if any of you feel like that, but I know I have, and maybe that's part of the reason why I gravitated to the conversation. So it's so much more than being creative. Even though that is definitely a big part of the story, but it's also just about, like doing what you feel called to do and using your gifts and sharing them with others. So we have some other folks, Jocelyn, we got Emily from New York City, New York reppin', Guadalupe from Durham, right here where I am. Patricia from Chicago is listening in. Lisbeth from Florida. So we're represented everywhere. If you're listening, feel free to drop that in terms of where you're listening from. Madi, let's just dive right into it, right? We're just going to dive right into it. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is a conversation, and like Ruby said, it's something that I really think is important to get out to the community at large, and something that I try to champion every day. A little bit about me. I am a second-gen Mexican-American Chicana from the San Francisco Bay Area. I was born and raised in San Jose, California, which is also known as Silicon Valley. Like, I grew up 5 minutes away from the eBay campus. It was kind of a weird time and place to be growing up at, but it was also really interesting to be in kind of this place of constant innovation and constant change, and especially from generation to generation. My parents are the children of farm workers, ranch hands, and also former farm workers themselves. My mother was picking crops until she was in her 20s and ran away to go to college. So big chingona energy, starting from my mother and my grandmothers. But yeah, so there's this element of constantly wanting to level up in our family, especially the women in our family, and I take a lot of strength from them. Otherwise, kind of standard traditional upbringing, Mexican American upbringing, a lot of expectations around what a good Mexican American girl should be. And if you look at me now, obviously I in my appearance alone, I break a lot of those traditional norms. But one of the things I wanted to do most was break away from traditional educational expectations and go a different route. And so now, like fast forward, I am the Finnish designer at Levi Strauss & Company for Levi's women's global denim. So pretty much I'm in charge of any colored denim, anything that has like a crazy bleach effect, anything that is like, I don't know, just like interesting out there, but then at the same time also do a lot of our indigo and like traditional classic stuff as well. So in charge of a lot. I just still can't believe that I'm here and get to do this every day. On top of that, I am the co-chair for our Latino ERG, Soul ERG, for Ellis & Co. for the US. And then I'm also happily married to my high school sweetheart, Alex, also a designer. And then I have 2 kids, a son and a daughter, Alanza and Vittorio.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So much on your plate. I love it. And I love that like you found another creative doing awesome work as well. So so one of the things that really I thought was interesting about your story as we were getting to know each other, and I'd love for you to share a little more, is just about your journey, because you kind of did the fast forward, right? But I know there was a lot that kind of happened in between, where you started and where you are now. And if I remember correctly, your parents were also look at there's my aunt, thank you, and then we have your sister too. All right, sister love right here. So, but one of the things that really I thought was kind of fascinating about your story or interesting was, your parents were very, they were kind of had that activist spirit, and they really wanted to up level, and their idea of up leveling, it sounds like, was very different from your idea of up leveling. Can you share a little more about that with our audience today?
For sure. So, again, my parents are kids of the 50s. They were born in the 50s in, Central California, to farm worker families. And so for them, education was a total escape. And it was true academic education. My dad and my mom both went to San Jose State University, so go Spartans. They pursued poli-sci and a business degree because they saw those things as like, that is to get into white collar. Those are the things you need. That's the tools you need. But at the same time as all of that was going on, the Chicano movement was purely like settled into San Jose, specifically in San Jose State. And so they were taking what they were learning in college, taking what they were learning in history. If you've ever been to San Jose, California, it is a very strong Mexican community. So there was so much of like this kind of like activism, like you're saying, this uprising of saying we deserve better, we deserve more, yada, yada, yada. Student unions were forming, which my parents were a part of, protests against the war, all of this. We grew up in such a politically active household, so much so that, we grew up going to marches. But again, that's the kind of stuff where they saw that was the level up, was becoming a part of society on their own terms, coming out of poverty, coming out of farm worker and ranch life, into the city, and making sure that it was done on their own terms. Next step is I come in and I say, okay, yes, but that's not necessarily what I want to do. I will say that I tried to pursue that. I got into UC Santa Cruz, which I was the first kid in my family to attend a UC, which was great. And I was pursuing Latino studies in hopes to become a lawyer and hopes to become a, civil rights, immigration, labor attorney. But come to find out, there's not a lot of like hands-on learning in those fields. And I really kind of discovered that I needed to be engaged with physical space and physical action and not 400-person lectures. So after some time, I decided to leave UC Santa Cruz and transfer to the Academy of Art University, which is here in San Francisco, and really kind of try to make it work. But I think for them, it was so much of like, these are the secured, tried and true ways of becoming, a middle-class family, the doctor, lawyer, engineer, that kind of route. And this whole fashion thing was undiscovered territory. And I think there was a level of risk involved because what my parents were thinking I was doing was signing up to go like work in a sweatshop, was signing up to just be sewing all day, signing up to like have to hustle and grind and put my body into labor, which is exactly what they got out of, you know? So I think that was really hard for them to understand. But again, here we are, you know, 11 years into my career, and I'd say I'm comfortably comfortable and comfortably secure because I've chosen this way of going about it. But yeah.
What was like during those days of kind of navigating, you know, your parents are hoping that you're going to go to law school, you know, kind of continue this tradition of activism, and you start, you know, kind of exploring outside of that. What was their initial reaction, and how did you like, how did you handle it so that it didn't deter you from pursuing this?
So I think one of the funny things is that my dad actually also wanted to be a lawyer, and he was, you know, one of the highest in his class, and got a full ride scholarship to Georgetown. And he got to Georgetown, got to DC, and realized that he didn't want to be a lawyer. So the funny part is that even though I was pursuing law, that was my end goal, he also didn't want me to be a lawyer. I think he was kind of like, you know, projecting onto me of like, you know, oh, I realized in my law journey that I wasn't going to get what I wanted out of it. So he was also not wanting me to be a lawyer, but also saying like, you have to find something equally as secure. And so what I ended up doing was really kind of, I wrangled in our older sister, who's our math whiz. And I had to like put together like numbers, like figures, like this is the cost of school, and this is, you know, market rate for like what a designer makes, and like really kind of prove to them, to the numbers, that this is something that's achievable and attainable, and I'm not just going into like, you know, manual labor. But I really had to like, I took them to the school. I toured the school with them and showed them. I had to really show that like this is the graduation rates. These are the connections to the industry after that, and really kind of give them that that security that they were hoping for me from traditional education. I had to prove that I was going to also receive it with this other route. And then at the same time, the financial portion of it, I went to a private art school. Like that's not the same as going to like a state school or anything like that. We had to come up with a plan, and they supported me where they could, but then the rest was on me, and I had to agree to that. And so I am still paying those student loans. But again, it was one of these things where it's like, I have to do this. I have to do this, and I can't get this from anywhere else. So this is where I'm going. So yeah, just really kind of like having to prove to them that this is a viable choice.
And how did you discover your passion for fashion design, and, you know, just even narrowing it down to fashion design? Because when we think of creative fields, there's so many different things that you could have done. So how did you know that this was the route to take for you?
It's actually really funny because I wanted nothing to do with sewing because this is one of those things where like our mom was like, you're going to learn how to cook, you're going to learn how to sew, you're going to learn how to crochet, because that's what my mom taught me. You need to do those things to be a good wife and mom, you know. And it came down to in 8th grade, there was a Civil War unit, you know, like project where you got to choose from several different types of projects. And I wanted to build like a stockade, like one of those, like, you know, things where people got locked up and like, you know, do some kind of woodworking or something like that. Because I knew my dad could help me with the tools. Like, that's what I want to do. Yeah. My mom said, nope, we are going to go get a pattern and you're going to learn how to sew. We're going to sew this dress together. I wanted nothing to do with this. Because I've always been like a tomboy, always been someone that's like, you know, oh, girly stuff. Like, no, thank you. But we sewed the heck out of that dress, and I got an A. So that was my first kind of like introduction. That was my first introduction into sewing. Kind of a funny, you know, way of getting into this, but it was a connection point for me and my mom also. And then I learned how to use the sewing machine, picked up kind of like hand embroidery, hand stitching. And then at the same time, it kind of snowballed in that I come from, like, there's 4 kids in our family. two working parents. We didn't have like all the money in the world to get like brand name, the labels of clothing that I wanted and stuff like that the other kids had. We had, a set amount of money, and we had to stretch it between 4 kids. And so whenever we go shopping, I never found the stuff that I wanted. I just, it just wasn't me. Again, like I have my own like vibe. I've always had this vibe. And so what I would do is I would either get the stuff that was there in the store or go thrifting. And then now that I knew how to sew, I would alter it to be what I wanted. Because I just didn't like what was available. And at the same time, it was like, also very like, this was like literally the 2000s, Y2K, everything was like super little, low rise, like super hot and sexy. And I also wasn't allowed to dress like that. That wasn't my thing because I was such a tomboy. So I had to really like find and make clothes that I wanted. So it just started there, like, having to kind of like in a way like self like advocate for myself and say, no, I don't want that. I want this, like, of like bringing this level of agency through the way I present myself. So it really started with that. And then from there, baby fat era for sure. It was a lot of baby fat. But it's
for me, it was, well, I'm a little older, but I just remember I really wanted Z Cavariccis. Probably half the audience doesn't even know what that is, but I wanted a pair of Z Cavariccis so bad. I remember finally for Christmas, my mom bought me a black pair. They were like $80 pants or something like that. Yeah. And I wore those like so much, right? Because that was just what I wanted, those black Z Cavariccis.
Yeah, so stuff like that, where it's like we didn't have all the money in the world to be clothing all 4 of us to the nines. So I had to, figure it out. And so from there, and then this is like really kind of dating myself, but in high school, it was like the whole like emo thing. And that was the music that we were into. And as you know, like I grew up on rock en español. And so like this whole like music scene was like a tangent of what I grew up on, in the same vibe. And so I really also wanted to outfit myself that way as well. The store that would have been good for that was Hot Topic, but my mom did not let us go into Hot Topic for the longest time, just based on the outside appearance. So again, it's like, how do I get Hot Topic looks without stepping foot in Hot Topic? Because my mom doesn't let me go into that store. So again, having to.
There's a lot of like being resourceful, right? Like being resourceful and like creating it because you had to bridge the gap between what you had and what was acceptable to your mom and what you wanted. Right?
Yeah. And so this is what's so funny is that like, if you see me ever in person, I wear all black, my head is shaved, like all this kind of stuff. I wasn't allowed to do any of that as a kid. My sister can attest to that. But it's just this kind of stuff of like, this was always in me. So it was bridging that gap. Hot Topic was the forbidden land. That is so true. So, again, just those more expectations.
It's one of those like, how do you know your mother is like now?
Exactly. So it's just like all these expectations set on me of, this is what a good Mexican girl looks like. And so just having to kind of like figure it out, like bridge the gap. So it started from there and then it snowballed.
I think that's
just
sorry,
to say,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries. Just it snowballed, and then it turned into, instead of me doing my, law study, reading all these books, I went into my happy place, and instead of I was like customizing T-shirts for the people in my dorms at UC Santa Cruz, and really kind of just focusing on the things that I loved and that came easy to me. And that's where my then boyfriend, now husband, says, "Hey, I know this art school. Why don't you come join me?" Because he was already at art school in San Francisco. So if you ask him, he's also part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. So
your mom is probably blaming him for his influence too, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to comment, and feel free if you're listening in, these are always engaging conversations. So if you have questions for Marisela, feel free to drop them in the chat. Feel free to comment. But one of the things that I really want to point to for a second, because it's come up a couple times, is what it means to be a a good girl, what it means to be a good wife, what it means to be a good Hispanic mom. And, it kind of strikes me as ironic knowing how, how much your family valued, education and, getting a career. And yet there was still this deep, cultural and gender beliefs around what it means to be like the good, good Mexican girl, right?
Yeah,
And it
totally.
showed up in like what you could wear, what was an acceptable job, like what was, appropriate. And I think, I write a lot about like Marianismo and the impacts that Marianismo has on our culture. And for those of you that might not be familiar with it, it's a belief system that gets passed down and is embedded in our culture. And I mean, there's a whole lot about it. It's really derived from the Catholic Church and, the Virgin Mary and how, she was submissive and that we should be modeling the same things. And, but it's also really deeply ingrained, and in my opinion, it's also it can be an impressive system. Now there are beautiful qualities. With that being said, I don't think it's a good, bad, right, wrong, either or. I think there's also beautiful qualities that we can learn, like the nurturing and empathy and things like that. So I want to say that, but it can also be very limiting, I guess I'll say, in what we're allowed to do. And as Latina women, what's appropriate, like I'm wearing red lipstick, for example, right now. Like, this was, what kind of Latina women wear red lipstick? Like growing up is what I would hear, right?
Yeah.
And so, did you ever, as you were kind of growing up or even now, do you ever reflect on kind of this pull between, get educated, go out and be a career woman, and then also the pull of being like what it means to be a good Latina daughter, wife, mother, and so on?
Yeah, and I think it's so funny because it's like, shout out to my therapist that it's, we've been working through all of this and, expectations and kind of almost the burden that is placed on us as like modern, Latina daughters and mothers. I mean, women in general, regardless of if you have a family of your own or not, you just you're expected to do it all. But at the same time, I watched my mom, who grew up making tortillas for her dad, her brothers, before they headed out to the fields. She was committed to that work, but at the same time was the manager of a whole bank, and then moved into local government work for the city of San Jose, handling millions of dollars in federal grants to make sure that they go to homeless service programs. So it's like this woman was busy, but she still was so committed to coming home and cooking a full meal. Like we were eating at 9:00 at night because she was so committed to cooking from scratch. So
no
I give
Instant
her
Pot back then.
no. And even if there was, I don't think she would have touched it. Like, she was like from scratch every night. So this is one of those things where it's like, I'm watching her do it all. And it's like, it's with so much love. And she says, this is my job. This is for my family. I need to make sure that they're fed. But at the same time, I'm just like, at what cost? And so it's this balance where I knew that when I became a mother, I wanted to do it differently or try things differently, because it was such a search for balance. I was seeing her just trying to execute. Microwave dinners were special for my sister. It was a rare occurrence, maybe leftovers. But it was one of these things where it's just like, I want
Alicia, you can give us all the real dish in the comments here.
But I wanted to try something different and see like, well, what can it be if maybe things were more balanced? Because it's not like my dad can't cook. He can cook well, but it was very much like the kitchen was my mom's space, like, and then the only people that were invited in were us girls to help support her. And so it was just, yeah, once I got into the corporate space or just career space, even before true career space, in my intern and college space, I needed the time to just focus and work, because the end goal was to be a fashion designer. And that took so much space. And the only thing that that saved me, and I will thank him for the rest of our lives, was my boyfriend that became my fiance, that became my husband. He's also a designer. He's a furniture designer at Party Barn Kids, actually across the street from Levi's. But he has always been someone that's like, I'm just here having fun. You go and climb the ladder. You exceed and excel and drive our family into the future. But he's taken on all the kitchen duties. He likes to remind me that I'm the 50s 1950s husband that comes home and dinner's on the table. So I have found a partner that is willing to support my dreams and then not put the expectation on me of doing this, that, and the other. So for me, it's been more about finding balance with someone who's willing to share the load. I don't think that I'm, any kind of like different of a mom, because I've chosen such a kind of like difficult career path, and make a point actually in my work to work efficiently, work fast, work decisively, so I can go home and be with my kids and not have to be on my phone on the side. Like, I've committed to myself to set those boundaries so I can be the Mexican mom that I want to be, after 6 p.m. I shut it off and I say, this is how I find my balance. And this is how I am carrying on that, message from my mom of, you have to be present, you have to do this, you have to do that. But I've shifted some things to my husband, say, please take more, because previous generations have not. And so I can still keep the things to me that are really important, like doing my daughter's hair. I braid it every morning, I brush it out, I give it the care and love that it deserves, that my husband doesn't know, though I have no hair right now. I had a lifetime of like really long hair, and so just making sure that I have those moments with my kids. That's where I feel like I am carrying the good Mexican mom tradition forward. So yeah. And then also being that breadwinner.
And I love that you
on. So yeah.
Yeah. I love though that you bring something so important up, is like you get to determine what a good Mexican mother looks like for you and your family. Yes. So it's not just automatically assuming that the way that you were taught is the way that it's going to work for you. And I think, this is really important. It's like I notice myself doing a lot I have 2 boys. So I'm a lot of times I am the Hispanic mother serving my kids and stuff like that. Right. But what I realize is like, it's the difference is that this is one of the ways that I express my love, and I choose to do it because I want to and I can, but it's never because I feel like I have to fulfill a certain role. And that's the difference is like, is it coming from a place of obligation, or is it coming from a place of love? And don't get me wrong, sometimes, I have had to kind of pull back a little bit because I didn't want them thinking that this was the expectation always either. And so I've had to pull back and, hey, like, wash your dishes. There's the food is there, like, help yourself when you're ready or whatever. And I've said to both of them flat out, like, especially because I'm a single mom, I've said, we're a team. We have to work together. There are days that, like, yes, I can make you a homemade meal, and like, I'm glad to, like, really bring it to you, and again, a way to express my love. And there are other days where you're just gonna have to make yourself a sandwich because I have too much going on, right? And it's good, but it's really important for each of us to really think about how does that look for us, and to like relieve, I think, some of the guilt. Some women, it's one of the things that I hear a lot from, especially from women and from others, is they feel guilty if they don't do these things. And so it's kind of like, with loving curiosity, start really looking at like, what has you believe that you have to do this, right?
Yep. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that like, I see what my mom did and why she did it, but it's the question of, like, is this even bringing me happiness? And in all honesty, cooking doesn't bring me that much happiness. I have a lot of like, I think trauma around the kitchen and being like mandated to do these things when it's not something that I'm naturally inclined to do. I'm kind of like a free form thinker and doer, and recipes are, rigid and structured. And if you do something wrong, then it's all, it's all bad. So, but yeah, having to let go of that, but then still finding those moments where, I want, for example, the one thing that I will make time to make is my abuela's tacos. That's something that will take me hours. I'm very slow at it, but I like to do it for like, my grandmother just passed earlier this year. And so we had my sister, her husband, my kids, my husband, and we all just sat around and, had my Bella's tacos. And it's one of those moments of like, that's what I choose to prioritize, is moments like that. During the week, we're speeding through it. We sit down for a family meal every night, but at the same time, yeah, I want to be very intentional about my, essentially, yeah, what gives me, I don't know, happiness, joy.
Yeah.
And
what a beautiful way to honor your grandmother and honor your mother too in what she did, and to acknowledge that like it was a beautiful thing that she did, and it wasn't for you, right? And to do it a different way.
Exactly.
So I want to transition a little bit into your career now, because you've been at Levi's for over a decade. Is that?
No, well, so actually just 5 years. I've been in the industry for 11 years, but just 5 years at Levi's. Yeah.
Okay. And now the fashion industry, while there are a lot of great designers, right? Like I can think of like, what is it? Oh man, I'm going to botch up. Is it Carolina Herrera? And there's a lot of great, like I don't know why I'm getting stumped now, but I know there's a lot of great designers, right? And even with a lot of those great designers, there's still a lack of representation in the fashion industry when it comes to, who's making the products and who's at the table. Can you tell us a little more about like what your experience has been as, a Latina woman in the fashion industry?
Sure. Yeah. So it's actually, it's really funny you say that, because there is a good handful of, kind of like big name brand designers that we'd all know if we like heard the name and be like, oh, I guess, yeah, they must be Latino, that kind of thing. But what's even funnier is that in the corporate space, when you're designing for a larger brand or like essentially 200-year-old company like Levi's is, your face isn't out there, it's just the brand. And so you're kind of like a hidden figure in a way, where you're just doing the thing, but then no one knows that you're the one doing it. I'm really proud to say, though, that in my 11 years in the industry, Levi's is the most diverse design team I've worked with. Usually I've worked in New York, Paris, London, and usually I am the only Mexican American, the only American born Latina that's in the room. I've worked with, Mexican nationals, Central Americans, and beyond in all three of those major fashion cities, but never has it been another hyphenated, American, Latina American, Latino American. But at Levi's, I'm proud to say that I'm one of 3 Latinas that are designing the women's product. And also our men's team. Our men's team has, 4 designers designing men's tops and denim. So it's like, you will never know that. You will never know that. But if you ever have people that are being like, oh, they're just trying to like do this, that, or the other, and, kind of like pander to our consumer market, it's like, no, it's not true. We're actually in the building and we're actually thinking of you. And so that's what's been really interesting, is that we also are very young. Everyone here that is, Latino, or pretty much all the BIPOC designers are millennials or younger. And so we're on the cusp, we're on the verge. Like shout out to my colleague Juan, who's a senior designer for men's denim. Like that's our highest ranked, Latino person in the design org. And then myself and my colleague Carmen on the women's denim team are, we're at the same level, but we are the highest ranked Latinas within the design org. So we're on the verge. We are the next level of, management and leadership. But that also makes it hard because we're not at the top. We're not the leaders yet. But we have to advocate for ourselves and continue to push the needs of our community forward, because a lot of times they get lost in this giant global company. Great news is that we're growing in Latin America, growing really fast. Levi's fans are, I think it goes without saying, Latinos love Levi's, and we have the actual data to prove it. And this is one of those situations where it's like, a friend of mine just called me the Latina mayor of Levi's the other day because I know everybody in here. But I connected recently with, we have someone in our Marketplace Insights, Consumer Insights team who is a fellow Chicano, and he hooked me up with some great data that I was able to actually present to the SVPs of our design org and say, look, you need to look at our market. We're here, here's a collection, a capsule idea that I just pitched. Actually, it was last Monday. So fingers crossed, we're going to be seeing some more Latino focused product in the future. But it's this kind of thing where it's like, we need to advocate for ourselves. We need to say that we're here in the room. Not only are we in the room, the consumer is on the rise. We have the highest, GDP out of any of the major ethnic groups in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. We are the youngest group in the United States of America. So all this stuff of I think that's been the biggest challenge is the fact that I'm in the room. Also that I'm very white. People may forget that I am, coming at this with a different lens. And so for me, I'm pushing agendas that the person next to me may not be pushing. So it's just been a very interesting journey as we're seeing our community grow and becoming, even more. Look at Texas; it's mostly Latino at this point. We're seeing ourselves grow in such a way that is undeniable that we need to ensure our visibility is at the forefront of our brand and product. So that's what's been really interesting in the past few years about my design journey. It's been not just making cool pants, but it's been advocating for our community as an actual consumer of our product. So that's kind of something that I have to do that maybe the next person doesn't have to do. Or I say I have to do because it's within me to do it. It's not.
Yeah, and I love that. I can hear your parents being so proud of you now, and hopefully they are, because it's also that upbringing, that perspective, everything that they went through, being part of the Chicano movement in such a significant time, and how that influenced you. It's like you still carry that spirit of activism. It might have might not be, within the realm of immigration or the legal of our community.
Yeah. And this is something that I got feedback once that was like, oh, Mari, don't be so hard on yourself. And I was like, I want you to understand.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I got feedback once that was like, don't be so hard on yourself. And I said, I need you to understand that when I walk in every day, it's not just Mari walking through the doors of this giant building at Levi's Plaza. It's me walking in the doors with everyone that came before me and everyone that is yet to come. I have a whole other agenda than just making cool pants. So it's very much that of and to also kind of move forward that this story that we're telling with these jeans, with these pants, starts from a place of utilitarian need. That's where my abuela was buying Levi's at the farm store.
Oh, I think you're breaking up a little, or is it me?
Oh. And wearing them out in the field. Can you hear me? Okay.
It might be me. I can't really tell. But yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead. So, as you were saying.
Just saying, and kind of giving our story in the larger story of this giant brand its spotlight, in that jeans were really made in San Francisco, California, as a utility garment, and they were worn by countless farm workers. They are worn by countless farm workers, so much so that my abuela was buying them at the farm store and wearing them in the fields. My dad, was wearing them in the 70s as a fashion statement, and here I am, designing the next round for women of the future. But it's just this whole thing of giving us our time in the spotlight of this brand, because just anecdotally, and we know that Latinos love Levi's. So
yeah. I mean, when I talked to you the first time, I think one of the first things I said was to you is like, I've never met an actual fashion designer, much less a Latina one. And I know you have this personal vendetta too. And Jocelyn says that her dad was a carpenter and only wore Levi's. I know when I used to go to Mexico to visit family, they'd be like, "Can you bring Levi's?" Because clothing is expensive there. But tell me more about your personal vendetta.
My personal vendetta is to make sure that we as a community understand that designers like myself exist, that we're here in these large, corporate environments, but even in businesses and brands that they start themselves. We're here. We really want to make sure that we are seen, that we are given credit, because so much of our fashion, language stems from specifically the Black community and the Latino community. And we need to be giving, essentially credit for who's designing and who's giving these ideas to the world. So it's my vendetta here, and my goal here, to make sure that our next generation, our Gen Z, Black and brown designers, have that kind of feeling of empowerment, of knowing that they are the future and they are the drive behind this brand, this 200-year-old brand almost. They need us essentially to keep going. So on top of that, just coming from experience of being that good Mexican girl and having parents that were very concerned about all of this. If you have a kid that's interested in the arts, interested in theater, interested in dance, interested in fashion, please let them explore. Please let them try. Just a fun fact, I never took an art class all the way K through 12, never took an art class. I took an art class when I went to art school. Yes. The only thing I knew how to do was sew. Other than that, my focus was on theater, because I loved being on the stage and just having fun. But what that has led to is now, within this year alone, multiple speaking engagements for this 200-year-old company. I moderate events here globally and have the ability to speak publicly and speak well. So theater has also provided me with that. On top of it, also teamwork, problem solving, X, Y, and Z, quick thinking, all of that came from theater, and sewing turned into this job. So it's let your kids explore. And if you're thinking about it and you're like, oh, I wish I could make myself a dress because things don't fit me, take a sewing class, do it, dive in, take that leap. It may not be a full-time switch, but you have the ability to just try it. So those are my two things.
Yeah. And there's so many benefits to creativity. And I when I was younger, I took oil painting lessons, and I was always the artsy, kind of quiet kid. I was never in sports ever. I think I did soccer once when I was little, and was picking flowers out in the middle of the field, and my mom said this isn't for her, despite the fact that my dad played pro soccer in Mexico. But I was always just more artsy, writing. I always like to write and reading a book or whatever. But there's so many benefits, and I think there's even as adults, it's important for us to tap into our creative side and to get away from the performance of it. Yeah. Because when we're little, we'll color and play with things. And then a couple years ago, well, maybe this is actually longer, maybe about 10 years ago, I held a workshop, and it was at an art studio. It was actually a children's art studio in Oak Park, Illinois, outside of Chicago. And I invited the participants, it was mostly women, professional women, to, as we were going through this kind of, life coaching workshop, but also bringing the art into it. And it was interesting to see how many people got stopped by thinking they weren't going to be able to do it good enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so, I mean, literally it was like Play-Doh or clay or whatever. And I had given them an exercise to like make something out of it. I think it was, we were talking about like mind monsters, like, things that get in our way, and like create a monster out of it with clay, and how some people just got stuck by doing that because they weren't going to be good at it. And yeah, tapping into our creative juices for the pure joy and fun of it, and seeing what could, like, who cares if you're good at it or not? It can like activate other parts of the brain, and we might get inspired or discover something new, whether it's playing with clay or writing or whatever it is. There's just so many benefits to bringing that creativity. Can be then a skill that we transfer over to things that we're doing in life in general.
Exactly. And that's something, another little nugget that I'll give that I've discovered on my journey, is that perfectionism comes from a scarcity mindset. Perfectionism is something that is passed down to us and inherited by us from unfortunately our parents and the people before us. Because if you messed up in your job, then you might lose that job. And so here we are in modern day, kind of giving that same mindset to these corporate roles, when in reality it is completely human to mess up. Or maybe you don't like really know what you're doing with clay, but all you can do is give it a shot. Put something on, like literally put something on paper, write it down, draw it out. Doesn't matter how bad it looks, you're still doing it. And that's the whole thing about a creative thinker is more than just a doer, like an executor. Creative thinker is a problem solver. And I posted about this on my LinkedIn to promote this event, is that the creative thinkers in my family started way before me, before they were officially a designer or a sculptor. My sister's a sculptor. My older sister is an architect. So it's like we have creative professionals in our family, in our blood, but we started because we had to, out of necessity. My grandmother was making flower sack dresses for my mother out of scraps. My dad and his family have always been, car repair junkies, and like wanting to make sure that the car just keeps running until it doesn't. So that kind of stuff is like, we have creative problem solving in our blood because of resourcefulness. Now, what we get to do in this day and age is to do it because it's a passion and because it brings us joy. So that's where I to this day, I step back and I will call my mom, and full circle moment. I'm now partnering with the United Farm Workers Foundation. They're our partners, like our nonprofit partners for Heritage Month here at Levi's. My mom was literally out there picking crops as a kid. That's full circle right there of like just being a creative thinker has literally got us here, where she was receiving help from nonprofits and charities as a kid, to now I'm partnering with corporate dollars to support United Farm Worker Foundation. Just like mind blowing.
And that gives me shivers, because that's just that's incredible, right? And so much of this, I mean, it's just like a beautiful way, going back to what I said earlier, it's a beautiful way to honor your family's history and where they've been. And so many times I feel like there's this pull away from what our family has done. Like, either we just take it on autopilot without thinking about it, and it just gets passed down, or I feel like we go completely the other way and just want nothing to do with it. And then maybe there's like this blending of it too. But like, what a beautiful way to still honor everything that your family has done and been through and experienced, and now you get to be on the other side of it. And so it's really breaking some of those breaking some of that scarcity, breaking some of the mindsets, like still being committed to your community and doing it in an impactful way. So that's just so beautiful too on that. I wanted to, like, actually, as I was thinking about that, you touched on something earlier, and I kind of want to go a little bit back, and it's more of a point that I want to make. And if you want to expand, you can, but I know that you mentioned therapy is one of the ways to kind of like break through some of this. And I want to emphasize this, and thank you for being transparent and bringing it, because I think this is such a huge issue within our community too. Like, there's no shame in asking for help or going to talk to someone. Like, I look at you like, you know, incredibly happy, successful, like doing your thing, making impact. And therapy has been a tool to support you in this journey. And I know I've used therapy over the years, for different things, whether, you know, I lost a brother, I went through divorce, job loss, like just whatever, different shifts in life's transitions. And specifically for me, a game changer was the last therapist I had, who's kind of still on retainer when I need her, is Latina too. And that was a game changer for me because she was the first Latina therapist that I had. And there was so much that I didn't have to explain regarding family dynamics that made it, I felt like I didn't have to justify or explain certain things. And I found that I got a lot more out of those sessions. And I don't know if that's, you know, you've been your experience, and you can or not, you know, it's up to you. I don't want to like completely put you on the spot, but I just want to say that asking for help, there's nothing wrong with it. And you don't even have to go to therapy because something is wrong. Like, you can just go almost as like maintenance or a self-care practice. So if you haven't given yourself permission, like, this is your sign. Like,
do it.
Do it.
This is what's so amazing about this, is that it's something I needed, something that, you know, my parents, you know, thought that this stuff was for crazy people, you know, just that kind of again, like kind of stigma around it that we already know exists in our community. But I really needed it because not only my upbringing and the expectations and all the everything that, you know, growing up Latina is, and having to work through releasing some of that, but then also the fashion industry is very traumatic. The expectations are high, perfectionism is high. I was working sometimes from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., 7 days a week for free because it was an honor to be there for my hero, like all this kind of stuff. What I've put myself through to grow in this industry is a lot. And it's something that I hope the industry, with kind of more forward and human-centered thinking, like Levi's is trying to do, will get us there. And so I really needed it just, to just untangle some of these knots and let go of those expectations of perfectionism, of the scarcity mindset that comes from an immigrant family, of those things that we just don't need anymore.
Yeah. So I know we're coming close to the end here, and I would love to hear from you about, you know, how is the best way that we can support Black and Brown creatives, like, and especially I'm emphasizing the Black and Brown, like, what do we need to know and how can we best support?
First of all, know that we're out here. We're few and far between. And actually, if anyone knows, of a designer, a fashion designer that's at a senior level or above nationally, I'm looking for a mentor. I'm going to put that shameless plug out there. I have other creative Latinas that are shepherding me through, visual merchandisers, DEI, you know, my own manager is a great coach and mentor, but I'm specifically looking for a fashion designer that is also a Latina and a senior level or above. But I think at the same time, find us on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram. You know, if it's a brand that is owned and self-run by, you know, a Black or Brown, Latino, Latina, you know, Latina designer, follow them, support them, buy their products. It's so kind of almost easy these days to find us. So it's harder, like I said, within a major corporation to know that we're here. But LinkedIn is a magical place, and you know, you can really see who's behind the scenes doing the work. So in a dream world in the future, a friend of mine Karen Santos and my younger sister, Lisa, in the chat, we're trying to build a Latina Creatives Network. So hopefully someday that comes to fruition. But yeah, so it's that kind of stuff. Find us, follow us, support us, put your money behind us, because again, that's the only way that we can grow, and continue to understand that creatives, all the way, we talked about Frida last week. Frida is one of the best known Latina creatives in the world. So this stuff is in our blood, and know that it's not it's not scary. If it's your calling, if it is what your child is called to do, support them, help them navigate. And if you need resources and advice, there are those of us that can help and guide. So yeah, just keep supporting.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that advice. So y'all pull out your wallets and support Latino artists, because that's one of the ways that we get to vote. We get to vote with our dollar. We get to put our buck where it really makes a difference. And there are a lot of there's a lot of data that shows that when you contribute, especially to women of color or Latinas, that they're more likely to put more money back into their communities too. So there really is that kind of ripple effect. And so support those. You can, go online, you can go on LinkedIn, you can go on Instagram. I bet if you Google, Latina artist, you can find some. Probably We All Grow has some connections too as well. I really appreciate this conversation today. And as we wrap up, a couple things, and I'm going to come back to you, Marisela, in just a second here. But for those of you joining into the new name program, Latina Connection with me, I'm grateful that you're here. If you haven't yet, I want to highly encourage you to go. I'm going to do a shameless plug here too. I want to highly encourage you to go to a poll that I have. I want to hold a masterclass, and it keeps getting equal numbers, and I need to break this tie. So I've got a couple master classes that I'm thinking about hosting, and I probably eventually will host all of them, but I'm thinking about the next one. So I have Sexy Self-Mastery, which is from self-saboteur to self-confident, which is one of them, which is more focused on personal leadership and personal development. The second one is Rewriting Your Story from Limitations to Liberation. So this is just about removing limiting beliefs and getting out of our own way. And, we might have one story, but how do we create a more empowering story out of it? Shameless self-promotion, all about personal branding, humble hard worker to confident communicator, really taking ownership of our strengths and our abilities. And then my last ones, I've posted a couple times, but it always seems to I get a lot of requests around it, is Boundaries Are Bonita, which is all about increasing your self-worth and productivity. So let me know which one of those interests you. On my LinkedIn, there's a poll, or you can drop it in the chat. But I really want feedback from you all, and that'll be a upcoming workshop. Again, Latina Connection will be bi-weekly. So there'll be different people coming on here. And this is all about life, leadership, Latinidad. It's about sharing our experiences and our stories. If you know someone that might be a great fit to be on the program, definitely reach out. And Marisela, thank you for your commitment to our community, and your commitment to yourself and to your family. And it sounds like you're rewriting your story in a way that works for you, that's empowering for you, right? And it's looking at, okay, here's a way that I get to honor my family and my upbringing and my history. And you know what? Some of this doesn't work for me, and that's okay. I can let it go, right? Make sure to reach out to Marisela on LinkedIn and connect with her. She's always putting a lot of great content. She is a leader out there. I'm going to call on y'all just to really help her find her next mentor. She, as she mentioned, she is looking for a senior fashion designer who is Latina to help mentor. So if you know of anyone, make sure to connect either, with me and I'll get you to her, or connect directly with her on LinkedIn. And Marisela, we're really proud of you. I like your energy and your transparency, everything that you're, doing and how you're making impact, and showing us that, being a creative doesn't mean it doesn't mean that you're going to be poor or unsuccessful or living in a shoebox, right? But there is an opportunity to bring your gifts and skills into the world and share it and make positive impact if that's what you're called to do.
Exactly.
So, everyone, thank you so much. Any last words, Marisela? Where can they find you? Is it LinkedIn the best place, or anywhere else?
LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram at Marisaurus, like Mari and Saurus, like dinosaur. I'm the only one with that name. And then also, just in general, Heritage Month is coming up. A lot of product rolls out everywhere from Etsy to Target. Buy it all. They need to know that we have the money to spend, and we're happy to spend it. So just buy anything you see.
Yay! Permission to shop.
Yes, do it. Shop.
All right, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Mari, thank you so much.
First, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.